Hey, Techno Studs. To create high availability on our networks, we need redundancy, and that includes redundancy with our data. And replication helps answer that question is how are we going to create redundancy with our data? So in this video, let's get into replication and what that looks like. In this video, we'll start out by talking about what is replication. Then we'll get into what to replicate. We'll talk about asynchronous versus synchronous replication. We'll get into bidirectional replication, and then talk about how file locking might be necessary depending on what you're replicating. Replication is essentially copying the data. However, it's a little more in depth than that, otherwise we just call it copying. Replication continues to keep its copy updated. So it'll continue to send it updates to this other version of itself to keep it up to date. We can actually compare this to a backup. When you're talking about a backup, you're creating a copy of it and it's a point in time that isn't going to change after that. Versus a replication is going to keep up to date. So if there's a change to your data, that backup is not going to change. However, a replica of it will continue to change. We can see the difference when we're talking about site redundancy. With a hot site, we would be replicating the databases to another location here. And so all the information at any given time, this is ready to be turned up and ready to go. Versus if we were to use backup instead, we would create a backup, we would ship it over to the other side, and then we would have to restore it to bring this site up and running. So then the question is, what do we replicate? Well, we could replicate databases, we could replicate files and folders, we could do servers, we could do configurations, directory information. So there's a lot of different things that we could replicate. Depending on what level you want to replicate at and what technology you're using, there's different ways that we can implement replication. A good example of machine or disk level replication would be something like VMware. Does a great job at doing that. Microsoft has a volume shadow copy that will do volume level replication. Dropbox does a great job at folder or file replication. And then Microsoft SQL Server has availability groups to do database replication. There is a difference between synchronous versus asynchronous replication. That is, let's say that there's some sort of record that needs to be added to a database. And so then we want it to be replicated to the other side. If this was synchronous, what would happen is the record would not be committed right away. It would be shipped over to the other database, and then it would be committed at the same time. And now you know that both of these databases are exactly at the same level, that nothing is going to get off there between these two databases. Versus asynchronous means that it doesn't necessarily have to happen at the same time. This record could be committed to this database, it could be shipped over to the other side at any point in time, and then this record gets committed to this database. Now, obviously, the ideal is that they get committed at the same time and that you make sure that there is integrity between these two databases. The problem is if your connection between these two sites are slow or between these two servers are slow, that could cause problems because there could be a delay with this record getting shipped over and a delay with it getting committed. Therefore, this record is being delayed committing to the primary database. So it could become problematic if you have a slow connection. Sometimes we want to implement bidirectional replication. So one thing that happens with a lot of databases is that you just have a primary database that has all of the records on it and then gets replicated over to a secondary database. That way we have some sort of ability to fail over to this other database. And perhaps maybe some sort of files are the same way. However, sometimes we want to be able to access both files from two different locations. And there we need a bidirectional replication where changes get replicated in both directions. Therefore, we can make changes on both documents. And a great example of this is Dropbox. Dropbox, you can, whatever location you have your Dropbox folders at, you can make changes to either one and it gets replicated to the other copy. Creating changes to two different copies can cause problems. And there's some systems that actually do really good about overcoming those problems, while other systems aren't quite as good at overcoming those issues. You get conflicts when you have a change that's made to one document that conflicts with a change made to another document. So one thing that we can do is we can do something called file locking. File locking is the idea that when a document or a file is opened, we lock that document so changes can't happen from one direction to the other. Once that is done with this document, it could unlock that document, and now changes can be made in the other location. And this would get locked so that way you can't make changes in this location. In this video, we start out by talking about replication is. It's making a copy and keeping that copy updated. We talked about what to replicate and at what level you would want to replicate things at. We talked about synchronous versus asynchronous, whether we commit the changes to the copies at the same time or we can do it at different times. We talked about bidirectional replication, whether you just have a primary copy and a secondary copy, or if you can change either document or either file at the same time. And then some technologies don't really handle bidirectional replication all that well, and so we have something called file locking where we lock one of the files so that way you can't change it on the other side.